Once upon a time, in a small, peaceful town nestled between green hills and winding cobblestone streets, there lived a young woman named Emily. She wasn't extraordinary in the way that people in stories often are. She wasn't a queen, a warrior, or a world traveler. Emily was ordinary, and yet there was something quietly magical about her. She had a way of seeing beauty in the smallest things, of finding joy in the simple moments others often overlooked. Emily worked at a little flower shop called Bloom and Bright. It was tucked into the corner of the town square, a cozy spot with large windows that seemed to burst with colors. Through those windows, passers-by could see Emily's handiwork, vibrant daisies that seemed to laugh in the sunlight, delicate roses arranged with the care of a painter, and tulips so tall and proud they looked like tiny soldiers standing at attention. For Emily, the flower shop wasn't just a job. It was her haven, her place of peace. Every morning she opened the shop early, her hands brushing dew off petals as she carefully arranged bouquets for the day ahead. She loved the stories her flowers told, messages of love, forgiveness, celebration, or remembrance. A bouquet wasn't just a collection of flowers to Emily. It was a way for people to express what words couldn't. Her customers adored her for it. Whether it was Mrs. Turner picking up roses for her anniversary, or little Sophie choosing daisies for her school recital, Emily had a knack for making everyone feel special. She listened with genuine interest, her warm smile lighting up the room. Yet, for all the joy she brought to others, Emily often felt a quiet loneliness in her heart. In the evenings, when the last customer left and the shop was finally quiet, Emily would sit by the counter, sipping tea and gazing out the window. The streets would glow with the soft light of the setting sun, and the world outside seemed so full of life and connection. But Emily always went home alone. Her house was small but cozy, filled with little touches of her personality, paintings of wildflowers she had made herself, books stacked on every surface, and a single vase of fresh flowers that she replaced weekly. As much as she loved her little haven, it sometimes felt too quiet, too still. Emily often wondered if she was meant to be alone. She had always dreamed of love, not the grand, sweeping kind from fairy tales, but the kind that felt real and steady. Someone who would walk beside her, laugh with her, and share life's quiet moments. She had almost stopped hoping for it. After all, her life was good, wasn't it? She had her flowers, her friends in the town, and her peaceful routines. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was missing. Little did Emily know, her life was about to change in a way she couldn't have imagined. Fate was already setting the stage, preparing to bring someone into her life who would fill her days with warmth and color she never knew she was missing. The story was just beginning, and Emily's heart was about to bloom in a way she had only dared to dream. It was a crisp autumn morning, the kind where the air feels sharp and fresh, and the world seems painted in warm shades of amber and gold. Emily was unlocking the doors of her little flower shop, humming softly to herself, when she noticed a figure lingering outside. The man stood a few feet away, his hands tucked into the pockets of his coat, his eyes darting between the shop's sign and the door. He looked as though he was debating whether to come in or walk away. From behind the glass, Emily could see the slight furrow in his brow, a mix of hesitation and uncertainty. There was something about him that caught her attention, an air of quiet sadness, like someone carrying the weight of something unspoken. Determined to ease his nerves, Emily opened the door and smiled warmly. "Good morning," she called out, her voice as inviting as the scent of fresh flowers wafting from the shop. The man looked up, startled for a moment, then offered a sheepish smile. "Good morning," he replied, his voice soft but rich. Slowly, he stepped inside, the little bell above the door jingling as it closed behind him. Emily watched as he scanned the shop, his eyes flitting from one display to another, but his body language remained uncertain. She approached him gently, not wanting to startle him. "How can I help you today?" she asked, her tone light and friendly. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. I'm looking for flowers," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's my sister's birthday, and I want to get her something special. But honestly, I don't really know much about flowers." Emily couldn't help but smile at his honesty. There was something endearing about his vulnerability, the way he admitted his lack of knowledge without pretense. "That's okay," she said, reassuringly. "You've come to the right place. What's your sister like? Does she have a favorite color?" The man's face softened as he thought about her question. "She loves yellow," he said after a moment. "She's always been, like sunshine, optimistic and full of life. No matter what's going on, yellow just feels like her." Emily's heart warmed at his words, at the way he spoke of his sister with such genuine affection. "Yellow is a wonderful choice," she said, her voice tinged with admiration. She turned toward the corner of the shop, where sunflowers stood tall and proud, their golden petals practically glowing in the morning light. "These are sunflowers," Emily said, carefully selecting a few. "They symbolize happiness, strength, and warmth. I think they're perfect for someone who sounds as bright as your sister." The man's eyes lit up as he watched Emily arrange the bouquet, adding a few sprigs of baby's breath and tying it all together with a soft, yellow ribbon. "Wow," he murmured, almost to himself. "They're beautiful. Thank you." As she handed him the bouquet, their hands brushed for a brief moment, a fleeting, accidental touch that sent an unexpected warmth through both of them. Their eyes met, and for a second, the world outside the shop seemed to fade away. "You're welcome," Emily said softly, her cheeks tinged with a faint blush. The man hesitated again, then offered a small smile. "I'm Daniel, by the way." "Emily," she replied, her own smile widening. "It was a pleasure to help you, Daniel." He lingered for a moment as though he wanted to say something more, but decided against it. "Thank you again," he said instead, his voice sincere. "I'm sure my sister will love these." As Daniel walked out of the shop, the little bell jingled again, and Emily found herself standing by the counter, watching him disappear down the street. A strange, unfamiliar feeling stirred within her. Not quite hope, but something close to it. For the rest of the day, Emily couldn't stop thinking about him. She replayed their brief conversation in her mind, the softness in his voice, the way his eyes seemed to hold a quiet story of their own. It was just a small moment, an ordinary interaction, and yet it felt like the beginning of something. Emily didn't know it then, but that fleeting encounter with Daniel had already planted a seed in her heart. A tiny spark of connection that would soon grow into something far greater than she could have imagined. In the weeks that followed, Daniel became a familiar face in Emily's flower shop. At first, his visits seemed purely coincidental. He'd stop by to buy flowers for his mother's birthday, then for a friend who had just gotten a promotion. But as time passed, Emily noticed a pattern. Daniel wasn't just there for the flowers. He was there for her. He would linger longer than most customers, his eyes wandering over the vibrant displays. But they always returned to Emily. His presence was calm, almost hesitant, as if he were testing the waters of something he couldn't quite define. Their conversation started small, as most do, with light chatter about the weather, books they loved, and the charm of their little town. Yet, each conversation felt like peeling back a layer, revealing something deeper. Emily found herself sharing parts of her life she hadn't talked about in years. Her childhood memories of running through her grandmother's garden, the way flowers had always fascinated her, and how opening her own shop had been a dream since she was a little girl. Daniel listened intently, his eyes soft with genuine interest. In turn, he shared pieces of his own story. He spoke of growing up in the same town, the years he had spent in the city for work, and how he had recently returned to be closer to his family. He told her about his mother, who had taught him to cook, and how preparing meals for loved ones was his way of showing care. The shop, once just a place of business for Emily, became a space filled with warmth and laughter whenever Daniel was there. They laughed over silly stories, swapped dreams of traveling to places they'd never been, and bonded over shared hopes for a simpler, more meaningful life. But for all the joy Daniel brought into her days, Emily couldn't help but feel a quiet uncertainty growing within her. Every time he walked out of the shop, leaving her with a bouquet of flowers in hand and a kind smile on his face, she felt a small ache. His presence had a way of making everything brighter, warmer, and when he was gone, the emptiness felt sharper. She wondered if he felt the same connection she did. Daniel was kind, thoughtful, and attentive, but Emily couldn't help but question whether he saw her as anything more than a friend. The thought tugged at her heart, leaving her caught between the joy of their growing bond and the fear of hoping for something more. One gray, rainy afternoon, the sound of the doorbell chimed softly as Daniel stepped into the flower shop. Raindrops clung to his coat, and his hair was slightly damp, but he carried something carefully in his hands, wrapped neatly in brown paper. There was no pretense this time, no mention of needing flowers for a special occasion or someone else. Emily looked up from arranging a bouquet, her eyes lighting up as they met his. "Daniel," she greeted warmly, noticing the small package. "What's this?" Daniel hesitated, his usual confidence replaced by a hint of nervousness. He held the package out to her, his voice quiet. "I saw this and I thought of you. I hoped you might like it." Curiosity mixed with an unexpected flutter in Emily's chest as she took the package from his hands. Carefully, she unwrapped the brown paper, her fingers grazing the edges delicately. Inside was a small potted plant, a sunflower, its golden petals vivid and radiant despite the dreary weather outside. But this sunflower was more than just a flower. It was planted in a handcrafted ceramic pot, simple yet beautiful, with a small card attached by a string. On the card, written in Daniel's neat handwriting, were 2 words. "For you." For a moment, Emily couldn't speak. The sunflower seemed to glow against the backdrop of the gray day. But it wasn't just the flower that moved her. It was the thoughtfulness behind it. Her fingers lightly traced the edge of the pot as her eyes filled with tears she couldn't hold back. "Daniel," she began, her voice trembling slightly with emotion, This is beautiful. Daniel's shy smile softened as he watched her reaction. I remembered how much you love sunflowers, he said gently. They reminded me of you, warm and full of life. I thought, maybe you'd like one of your own. Emily's heart swelled at his words, the sincerity in his voice, and the gesture that spoke louder than any words could. She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You don't know how much this means to me. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt something she hadn't in years, a spark of hope. That simple sunflower, a thoughtful gift from someone she was growing to care for deeply, seemed to bloom in her heart, filling it with warmth on even the rainiest of days. As the days turned into weeks, Emily found herself thinking about Daniel more often than she cared to admit. His laughter, his thoughtful words, and the way he always seemed to notice the little things about her. It all lingered in her mind like the scent of the flowers she worked with daily. Every interaction, no matter how brief, left her heart full and her thoughts racing. She had fallen for him. It wasn't sudden or dramatic, but a quiet realization that took root in her heart and grew stronger with each passing day. Yet with that love came fear. The fear of misreading his kindness, of mistaking his frequent visits for something they weren't. She worried that if she voiced her feelings, she might ruin the gentle bond they had built. One cold evening, as the first stars began to dot the sky, Emily locked the shop door and turned to see Daniel standing there. He wasn't holding flowers or a gift this time. Instead, he stood with his hands in his pockets, his expression earnest but nervous. Daniel, she said, startled but glad to see him. What are you doing here? He hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, his breath visible in the chilly air. I needed to see you, he said softly. There's something I've been meaning to say. Emily's heart quickened, her thoughts swirling. What is it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel took a deep breath, his gaze meeting hers with an intensity that made her chest tighten. I've been coming to the shop all this time, not just because I needed flowers, but because I wanted to be near you, he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. I've found every excuse I could just to see you, to hear your voice, and to watch the way you light up when you talk about flowers. I didn't want to wait anymore to tell you. I've fallen for you, Emily, completely and deeply. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Emily stared at him, her breath caught in her throat, her emotions swirling between disbelief and overwhelming joy. Daniel, she began, her voice breaking with emotion. I've felt the same way. I've been hoping you'd feel this too, but I was too afraid to say it. Relief and happiness washed over Daniel's face, and he stepped closer, his hand gently brushing hers. This time, she didn't pull away. Their hands intertwined naturally, as if it had always been meant to be. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the night's cool air, Emily and Daniel's hearts found each other, and the fear that once held them back dissolved into something warm, certain, and impossibly beautiful. From the day Daniel and Emily confessed their feelings, their connection blossomed into something truly special. What began as shy exchanges in a cozy flower shop evolved into a partnership filled with warmth, laughter, and quiet understanding. Their days together were simple but meaningful. They spent mornings strolling through the park, enjoying the crisp air and the golden hues of autumn leaves. Afternoons often found them in the flower shop, Daniel helping Emily arrange bouquets or restock shelves, his clumsy but earnest efforts filling the space with laughter. Evenings were reserved for dinners, where they would share stories about their pasts, their hopes for the future, and the little things that made them who they were. Emily found comfort in Daniel's steady presence, his unwavering kindness a balm to her heart. For Daniel, Emily was a light he hadn't realized he was missing, a reminder of the beauty and simplicity and the joy of genuine connection. They both knew that life wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, long days at work, unexpected hurdles, and the uncertainties that life often throws our way. But they also knew that their love was built on something strong. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was real, steady, and deeply rooted, like the sunflowers that had first drawn them together. One chilly evening, as they stood outside the shop under a sky sprinkled with stars, Daniel held Emily's hand and smiled. "You know," he said, his voice soft, "this shop, it's not just about flowers anymore. It's about everything we've built together. It's about you." Emily looked at him, her eyes glistening. "And it's about us," she replied, her voice filled with gratitude. "I never thought something so simple could lead to something so beautiful." In that moment, they knew they had found something rare. Love that didn't need grand gestures to feel profound. It was in the little things. The way Daniel remembered Emily's favorite tea. The way Emily tucked a sunflower into his car on particularly tough days. The way they found joy in each other's company, even when nothing extraordinary happened. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. A love story written in petals, laughter, and the quiet courage to open their hearts. And as they stood there, hand in hand, they knew the most beautiful chapters of their lives were still ahead. Thank you for joining us in this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Remember, love often finds us in the most unexpected places. Sometimes, all it takes is a little kindness and the courage to let it bloom. See you in the next story.